From managing the COVID-19 crisis to reopening the economy, Malaysia's road to recovery is paved with many challenges. The pandemic has had a profound impact on consumption patterns, from grocery shopping and buying essential items to performing work. The changing landscape of consumers' behavior presents yet another challenge. While the rapid shift from brick and mortar to online shopping platforms bodes well for the digital economy, it also has important consequences on consumers' financial management and resilience. What can we learn from the pandemic to ensure our consumers remain resilient? For many consumers, old spending habits die hard. Will the pandemic break the norm? I'm Muhammad Mafrukin Mokhtar, and this is The Insights.
Let's go!
The pandemic has transformed consumer spending habits. A recent study conducted by AKPK's Financial Education and Wellbeing Research Center, FEWRC, reveals several key findings. First, during the pandemic, consumers reduced their overall spending approximately about 11%, where self-employed and high-income earners recorded the highest spending adjustments. Second, the two biggest discretionary spending cuts were on restaurants and hotels at 56%, followed by recreation and services and culture at 52%. These cuts came hand in hand with budget adjustments to facilitate working and learning from home arrangements. Moving on to the third highlight that we want to share today, the pandemic forced consumers to shift to online shopping as the new normal. 85% of respondents claimed that they will continue this new normal post-pandemic. Fourth, as consumers turn to embrace digital browsing and online shopping, the amounts of spend online increase. Those who used to spend more than 200 ringgit a month before the pandemic had increased in numbers from 16 to 30% during the pandemic. And last but not least, the insight that we want to share and highlight today is, in line with the growing trend of online shopping, our survey found that 3 out of 10 respondents were classified as compulsive online spenders. There are many other insights that we have in the full report, which can be obtained via online from AKPK website at akpk.org.my. So we will provide you the link in the FB chat at the end of the show, and please stay tuned. We are very honored to have our list of distinguished speakers and guests to our The Insights program today. And let me start with Yang Berbahagia Dato' Dr. Paul Selvaraj, Secretary General of Federation of Malaysian Consumer Association. Welcome, Dato', to The Insights.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So, Dato', we have heard about, the statistic that we have shared. We did a research on that. Maybe you would like to provide your views on that, and maybe perhaps you want to add your observation on the consumer behavior during pandemic, and perhaps now we are actually transition into endemic phase. So is there any changes on the behavior that you observe?
Thank you, Saudara Mafrukin, friends. Now, to compare pre, during, and post, I think let's start with pre. What was the behavior of financial behavior of consumers before COVID? Now, there's a lot of data on that, and from various sources. AKPK, of course, is one major source. Of course, Bank Negara, FOMCA himself have done their research. But all the findings are consistent, and in fact, I would say very worrisome. Savings were low. The 76% would have difficulty to raise 1,000 for emergency. Only 6% could survive for more than 6 months after losing their main source of income. There was also a lot of high debts. 47% of youths had high credit card debts. And bankruptcy level, these are one of our biggest concerns. 70% of them were between the ages of 35 and 45. Preparation for retirement was very poor. 55% did not even think of retirement, and 67%, according to EPF, did not have the minimum amount to retire. Yeah. Secondly, financial behavior was serious, but financial literacy was also low. Yeah, only 36% compared to 59% in developed countries. Thus, overall, responsible financial scores were worried. Yeah. Now, in analyzing why this poor behavior, the Bank Negara Deputy Governor at that time, we attended a program on Financial Literacy Month. He gave 4 reasons, and I think I just want to mention this in brief, why many Malaysians were facing financial problems. Now, firstly, he had said that financial resilience was low. And clearly, the data shows that many consumers do not have enough to face emergencies, whether it's job loss or income loss or some personal emergency. Secondly, and this is one of the particular concerns as far as young people are concerned, he said very often they are seeking instant gratification. Spend now, don't think much about tomorrow. I mean, there's a term we use in behavior, it's called YOLO, you only live once culture. Yeah. Now, this kind of culture means you are not thinking of the future, you're thinking of being happy now. The third, when you think of this, the third component was, of course, no long-range planning. Yeah. So even during the COVID, when people were more thinking of affordability, they were not using a method, a structure, able to manage their finances. And fourth, very important thing you mentioned is there was very little knowledge about risk and return. And this often meant that they were not very rational in the way they make decisions. So these were some of the factors pre-COVID. Now, during COVID, apart from health issues, of course, there were serious economic issues. And as mentioned in the report, 37% had lost their jobs and 27% had their incomes reduced. Now, this challenging environment brought a lot of behavioral change, I would say, to the positive. Now, the report would say they were more critical in terms of expenditure. They will look at affordability. Yeah, I mean, of course, our own research shows that they were more cautious in the way they spend. There was reduction in terms of luxuries. Savings actually increased for many people. Yeah, and there was greater awareness of the need for savings to face emergencies. Consumers intended to improve their spending behavior. Yeah. Now, in terms of why people change behavior, there are 2 factors. One is personal factor, through knowledge, through attitude, change of attitude, through change of skills, yeah, and trying to be better. The other thing is the environment, whether it's the media or whether it's your own situation. Clearly, this change of behavior was because of the environment. So that's a problem, because once the environment changes, if their change in behavior is not internalized, they will go back to their old behavior. Yeah. So now coming to post-behavior, post-COVID. Now, certainly there are some positive developments, as you had mentioned. More are purchasing online, more doing online banking, more are more comfortable using online. But our concern is that consumers are going back to their old habits. When they were given an opportunity to take the EPF, many of them took the EPF, which means that their long-term retirement issues are compromised. Yeah, recovery, economic, people are spending more. Shopping malls are filled, restaurants are filled. So I think what's our biggest concern is that people are going back to old habits. What they have learned through COVID have not been internalized and have not become part of your life. That is my biggest worry.
Thank you very much, Dato'. Very interesting that one point you emphasize on the positive behavior during the pandemic, where people are actually very cautious about their spending. Yeah. And now you're concerned about, people, whether they're going back to the old habits, they forgot about the prudence that they practiced during the pandemic. So that's your concern. It's very interesting. And now I would like to bring the discussion to the, we have focused on the consumers. Now we're looking into how government, especially the ministry, react on this. We have our next speakers from the Ministry of Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs, KPDN HCP. Please join me to welcome Ms. Sumita Nilamigam, Senior Assistant Director, Consumerism Research and Policy Division of KPDN HCP. How are you, Ms. Sumita?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mr. Mafrukin?
I'm good. Thank you for joining the Insights. Welcome.
Yeah, hello, Dato'. How are you?
Yeah, Dato' is fine with us. All right, so earlier we shared some key findings on consumer behaviors, and also Dato' Paul offered some his observation and adding some back on some statistics from a report from the Bank Negara Malaysia. And what is actually, Captain HP, how does Captain HP react on these changes of consumer behavior? We can see that the shifts from conventional brick and mortar to the online shopping trend and whatnot. So how does Captain HP react to this? And maybe perhaps you would like to give some examples on what are the initiatives that have been taken by Captain HP, Ms. Sumita.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mafrukin. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank AKPK for inviting KPDHP for this talk show. As you may already know, digitalization is fast evolving and transforming many sectors and areas of life. E-commerce platform and mobile applications are enjoying considerable popularity due to making available variety of products and services. The COVID-19 pandemic has further actually accelerated the growth of e-commerce, including the emergence of so-called social commerce. So as the response to these consumer behavioral changes during the pandemic, KPDN HEP has continuously conducted consumer advocacy programs and as well as education to empower consumers on their rights and for them to make well-informed purchasing decisions so that they do not become the victim of unfair online business practices. Various platforms and avenues were used to conduct these advocacy programs, such as through e-commerce platforms, social media forums, talk shows, and also through social media influencers such as recently we used Post James, where recently his consumer advocacy videos reached more than 1 million views in TikTok. As to enlighten and educate the consumer on the methods and tips to be followed before and after an online transaction, the guideline in performing online transactions for consumer were launched in 2020. The guideline, which also aims to cultivate a more responsible and ethical online traders and eventually expected to reduce the number of consumer scams and frauds. Okay, and if you see nowadays, mobile payment system or e-wallet are likely to be one of the most commonly used cashless method, payment method by the consumer. Thus, responding to this development, KPDN HEP launched the Retail Sector Digitization Initiative, or we call it as READY, in 2021 as a proactive step for traders and consumers to embrace this current digital transformation. This READY program is targeted for small and micro level trader in the rural area to accept and use e-wallets as a payment gateway. So this method also benefits the consumer with easy, fast, and safe transaction. So this initiative is actually supported by BNM and as well as e-wallet providers to create a much inclusive digital society. So, however, if consumers do face any transgression by the online traders, KPDN HEP strongly recommends the consumers to complain through our 9 complaint channels provided by KPDN HEP, which you all could refer in our KPDN HEP website or official social media. The most widely used complaint channels are WhatsApp, Easy Adu smartphone application, and as well as e-Aduan complaint portal. So while KPDN HEP has taken initiative to protect consumer interests and harmonize the national economy, consumers also must be extra vigilant of the environmental changes that have impacted the rise of cost of goods and services and brace themselves up to face these challenges by being an empowered consumer. Thank you.
I must say that there is a lot of initiatives have been done by KPDN HEP, essentially for the interest of consumers. I would like to comment all the initiatives, and I think the most importantly that you mentioned about the redress avenue for those who have issues on the consumerism, they can lodge the complaints and can refer to the website of KPDN HEP. Thank you very much, Ms. Mita. Now I would like to bring some global perspectives. We have our next speaker joining us all the way from United Arab Emirates. Is an associate professor of Finance from the Al-Qasimiyah University. Please join me to welcome Assistant Professor Dr. Maya Pusparahman. Assalamualaikum, Prof. How are you, Prof?
Alhamdulillah, alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Mr. Mafrukin?
I'm good. Thank you, Prof, for joining.
Yes, it's a pleasure, How are you, Dato? And I hope Miss Sumita is also doing great. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, so, Prof, the pandemic changed the habits of consumers all over the world. And I think you have heard about how Malaysian consumer behavior changed. And maybe perhaps from the global perspective, could you give us some, is there any difference between those developed and well-developed companies, developing countries and developed countries? Is there any changes or is there any differences? Maybe perhaps you would like to share some of the insights from the global perspective, Prof?
Right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh again. And thank you so much, Mr. Mafrukin and AKPK team for inviting me to share some of the insights, particularly on the topic that is very close to all of our hearts. So in response to what you have initially shared and from what Dato has actually highlighted, and also Ms. Sumita has highlighted, this pandemic has certainly changed the consumer spending and financial behavior. So I would like to basically bring your attention, the audience attention to the household spending, the percentage of household spending, how has it changed over the years. So this data is basically mapped from the World Bank data. So we are mapping it from 2006 up until 2021, where we actually look into some of the advanced countries like the United States, United Kingdom, Japan, Singapore. We also included in China and Malaysia and Indonesia as well. So what we would like to basically highlight is how severe the pandemic has actually impacted not only the developing countries, but also the developed countries. So as you can see, if it's shown in your screen with regards to the particular data, the spread over in terms of the percentage change of the household expenditure, it has basically gone beyond the negative region. So when it has gone beyond the negative region, we can also see the pattern that it has even gone beyond the even lower level than during the global financial crisis. So that is how severe most of us has been impacted. But of course, yes, alhamdulillah, most of the countries are already at the endemic phase, and we can see that even from the graph, we can see that it is a pickup, in terms of the household spending since 2021, and inshallah, hopefully things are basically good. But on top of that, I mean, in terms of other observation that we are seeing, like what Dr. Paul has actually highlighted, a lot of people has been losing their jobs. So financial distress is actually inevitable. Most of the people has basically facing financial distress. I would like to highlight one of the research undertaken by Deloitte, a global state of consumer tracker, where they map over 24 countries and monthly basis, targeting 1,000 adults over the age of 18 years of age. 42% of the respondents indicated worsening financial condition over the past year. And this is a recent study, And only 1/3 of them indicated that they can afford huge and unexpected expenses in the future. And due to that, because of the reduction in terms of income, the job losses, financial distress is also observed. A much recent study that is being published under International Journal of Public Health this year has highlighted the worsening psychological health in Canada and deterioration of mental health in the United Kingdom associated with financial distress during the pandemic. We are also seeing the similar pattern in Spain, in Italy, and also in some of the low and middle income countries. But of course, again, we are very, very much grateful that we are all at the endemic phase and things look a little bit much better than before, a couple of years back. And of course, we do agree that In every obstacle, there must be a silver lining. In every difficulties, there must be some opportunities. Yeah. So like what Dr. Paul has also highlighted earlier, the savings has actually increased. So people, consumers' awareness has actually been improved, right? If in fact we can see this from the percentage of household savings when we look at it, the household saving as a percentage of disposable income in most of the advanced countries. Yeah. If I may share with you, yeah, some of the statistics that we obtained from OECD. Countries like United States of America, before the pandemic, 2018 and 2019, their savings rate was very low, about 7%. But in 2020, it has gone up by to 17%. Ireland has reached a savings rate, yeah, as a percentage of household disposable income, up to 21%, where before that it was only 5%. Yeah, similarly in Euro area, double digit. Before that it was a single digit. So these are some of the outcome household saving. And if I may still have the time, yeah, Mr. In, just one more thing that I would like to highlight on the good outcome coming from the pandemic is of course the accelerated digitalization. It is also being highlighted in the recent report, yeah, and the trend is also similar, right, with regards to the fintech apps usage. Yeah, the OECD has actually highlighted there is about 270 million apps downloaded during the pandemic peak. Yeah, so I think the acceleration in terms of the fintech or the what we call it, the consumers usage, they're becoming more financial technology or financial savvy. Yeah, so I think that is one of the things that I'd like to highlight. So coming back to the question, I believe both developed and developing countries are facing quite similar challenges and opportunities, but the difference would only be in terms of how much it is basically impacting them, especially, and to what extent, yeah, especially to a different consumers level. Inshallah. So over to you again, Mr. In.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Maya Puspa. And I mean, there is no difference between developed and well-developed countries. And I think you also mentioned about the effect of the pandemic, financial distress,
Yes.
but at the same time, the positivity of this pandemic actually giving opportunity to people to embrace digital, which is very good. And we have a lot more questions that we will come back, and we will have a short break, and please stay tuned.
Let's go.
Tu kereta aku. Kau ada? Kereta aku boleh cucuk USB. Kau ada?
USB je.
Hai! Kereta aku ada kursi urut. Kau ada? Ada. Kau ada?
Tak ada.
Kereta aku boleh pergi 330 km sejam. Kau ada? Kereta dia tu tiap-tiap bulan dia bayar RM3,000. Kau ada? Insurans dengan road tax kereta dia ni setiap tahun RM5,500. Kau ada? Itu tayar kereta lah. Kalau sekali tukar walau RM2,000. Lu ada?
Tak ada. Tapi kau ada ke duit nak bayar semua benda ni?
Tak ada, tak ada.
Beli kereta jangan ikutkan hati. Nanti susah hati. Jangan sampai begitu. Tanya AKPK terlebih dahulu sebelum membuat sebarang keputusan kewangan. #AskAKPK.
Let's go.
Welcome back to the Insights, and we are talking about consumer behavior, what lesson we can learn from the pandemic. Will the old habits return or die? Brought to you by AKPK, Financial Education and Wellbeing Research Center, FUWRC. So before we continue to the discussion, I would like to bring attention to the statistics on scams and fraud due to online. In the first 7 months of 2022, Malaysians have lost about 415 million to scammers. For the whole of 2021, the losses increased to about 560.8 million as compared to the previous year, 511.2 million in 2020. So the figure tells us that online fraud and cybercrime cases are on the rise as Malaysians embrace the digital economy. I would like to bring the discussion first to Ms. Sumita of KPDN HCP, where KPDN HCP has this tribunal of consumers. My question is, we have now looking into online scams, and police have showed the statistics are quite worrying increase of amounts lost from Malaysian to scammers. What about the tribunal? Do you have, does KPDN HCP on the tribunal experience also increase reports from the consumers, or maybe perhaps you would like to share some of the cases that have been reported by the consumers in the tribunal, Ms. Sumita?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mafrukin. Okay, but first of all, I would like to highlight some of the statistics that we have received, the complaint statistic. If we see in 2019, there were a total number of 5,416 complaints related to e-commerce received by KPDN HCP. But if you look in 2020 and 2021, which is during the pandemic and the movement control order, the number of consumer complaints regarding to online purchasing drastically increased to 11,511 and 11,392 respectively, which is a 100% increase. This actually shows the shift to online shopping during the movement control order does indeed led to increased number of consumers exposed to frauds and scams. But at this point also, we like to highlight on a study on Malaysian consumer empowerment, which were done in 2020 by KPDN HCP involving 12,482 respondents in whole Malaysia. The study was conducted during the pandemic. And some of the findings does reflect to consumer behavior during the pandemic. The study finds out of 52.7% of consumers who shopped online, more than a quarter of them, which is 28.5%, encountered some kind of problem relating to online transaction. And among respondents who encountered problem with their online purchases, 17% of them were scam victims. This also proved the risk of consumers to encounter problem in an online transaction have increased during the pandemic. Meanwhile, when we look at the Tribunal for Consumer Claims, or TTPM, which was established under the Consumer Protection Act, is to provide an alternative channel for consumers to make a compensation claims regarding goods and services in cheaper, easier and quicker method. During the pandemic, the Tribunal handled cases related to related to online transaction fraud, which falls under the scope of Consumer Protection Act. As per the statistic, there's a slight increase in the number of cases handled by the tribunal related to online transaction claims during the pandemic. A total of 2,297 cases were filed in 2019, whereas in 2020, the number slightly increased to 2,538, and in 2021, the number is at 2,362. This trend actually shows that consumers in Malaysia are aware of their consumer rights and seek redress to our tribunal to get their compensation. On the other hand, it also shows the occurrence of online scams and fraud have increased during the pandemic. But in some incidents, we like to highlight too here, the tribunal may not be able to solve some of the online fraud cases because lack of details of the culprits, So in this situation, consumers will be advised to file a police report to the Commercial Crime Investigation Department, CCID, under the Royal Malaysian Police, so that a thorough investigation can be conducted to identify the culprit. This is because the tribunal only conducts the process of hearing claims and does not have the jurisdiction or authority to investigate a scam or fraud which falls under the criminal category. However, we KBHP do actively involve in advocating and campaigning the importance of being a smart consumer and encourage consumers carefully review every details of the businesses before they proceed to any transaction. And if they still do fall prey to these unfair businesses, they are advised to seek redress at tribunal.
Thank you, Ms. Mita. I mean, as you mentioned, the tribunal also have an increase in the reports lodging from the consumers. So it's actually basically there is a risk on consumers where these online digital platform actually open room for those who irresponsible parties who actually doing some fraud and scam. So that's Malaysian cases. I would like to bring the attention to some global insights. I would like to go back to Professor Maya on the what happened globally. I mean, we have scams, we have frauds, we have also complaints from the consumers in Malaysia. Other than that, is there any other extraordinary challenges that have been faced by the consumers in the well-developed countries in global perspective? So maybe you would like to give some sharings, Prof?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mafrukin. Yeah, I think generally speaking, because we are staying or living in a digital era, the challenges are almost quite similar as well. It is inevitable, because we are basically looking or facing this organized crime that are making use of this recent technology and things like that. If I may share some of the statistics, for example, the UK Finance, they have, based on their banking protocol, they managed to stop in total of 45.3 million pound of scams in 2020. And they have also the dedicated card and payment unit crime, have basically arrested 100 fraudsters during the year, including criminals that is being involved with regards to this COVID-19 scams and whatnot. So the challenges are quite similar, but I think what would also be useful or beneficial for us to understand is that how do we make consumers truly aware? Because this is also happening in the advanced countries as well. One of the report highlighted by OECD, they pointed out that the level of public's knowledge is typically much lower than it is often assumed by the economists. So more things needs to continuously be done. What Ms. Sumita highlighted earlier in terms of the awareness programs and things like that. So it has to be a continuous effort, not only from the government, but also the non-government, public and private agencies. If I may also share one example in UAE, right? Specifically in UAE, the central bank, the UAE Banks Federation, as well as the Abu Dhabi and Dubai police force, they have joined forces to basically launch an awareness social media campaign under the theme #Together Against Fraud, to basically increase the consumers' awareness. Because I think most of the main challenge is how do we make consumers, how do the countries make consumers truly aware of this this particular challenge, and but on top of that, what matters most is the strict and efficient law enforcement and implementation. I think that is also much more crucial. For example, if I may share, what was happening in Italy, the authority that is responsible for regulating the securities market, they have the ability to basically order internet and telecommunication service providers to ban access to certain website that is appeared to be misleading, appeared to be illicit and whatnot. So over the years, as reported in OECD, they have actually closed down or blocked in amount of 413 websites, specifically during this pandemic. So hopefully with all these measures, we are able to basically tackle the challenges that is basically giving threats to the consumers, yeah, especially when we are all having pure access in terms of this digitalization and things like that. Yeah, inshallah. Over to you, Mr. Mafruki.
Thank you for the insights, Prof. I would say scams is everywhere. You know, the consumers are exposed to the scams and frauds, and at the same time, consumers also need to be educated, Dato'. So maybe in addition to the scams, maybe consumers also need to know how to behave and manage their money when they have money, and awareness about the scams and protect themselves from being cheated and whatnot. So question that what is the best platform or way to educate consumers from your perspective?
I think in a modern economy, but more so in a challenging modern economy, and especially now with the digital economy, financial education becomes very crucial. Now, when we look at the data that I presented earlier, we can see that the quality of financial behavior is something that worries us. And one of the things that can change behavior is, of course, knowledge, attitude, skill development. And this can only come about through financial education. And I think in this modern economy, as I mentioned, there are several factors that makes financial education very important. One is, firstly, cost of living is increasing, but salary is not increasing, you know. So people are being squeezed. And the people are particularly that are being squeezed are the B40, because a big part of their salary is on essentials, and the price of essentials is going up. So they need financial education, not only in terms of current management, but it also in terms of future needs. The second is, of course, people are living longer. And when people live longer, it means that you know there's a lapse of time between when they retire and when, well, end of days, yeah. So it means they need more savings. So we need to think, for example, financial education is important in preparing them for the retirement years. And recently, when they're taking out the money, it's really something that we are worried about the future, yeah. And the third fact is that today, whether we like it or not, more and more responsibility is being given to the consumer. Last time we used to say EPF is enough, but now we are saying that EPF is not enough. You also have to learn to save, to invest in other forms so that you'll have enough for retirement. Yeah, enough for retirement. Yeah, even healthcare. People are using public healthcare, but they're also going to private healthcare. Even education. Now, all of this needs planning. All of this needs, you know, some kind of system where, as used the word structured method of managing your finances. And I think currently the products that have been coming out, financial products especially, are very complex. You know, and we need people. I mean, there's so much of innovation. Even I sometimes have problem really trying to understand the products. Yeah. How much more the ordinary people? And when you do not understand the products, you make decisions. You make decisions which may not be in your best interest. And I think in this current time, when there's a lot of digital economy and a lot of people have come on, that's good. But also it exposes people to scams and other kinds of things. So in taking into consideration in all of this, I think financial education becomes very crucial. Through financial education, we're trying to change the information level, the knowledge level, the skill level, the confidence, and of course, you know, building that thing that financial education is essential for their current and future well-being. And in terms of what is the best strategy, I think financial education is not only about knowledge, it's about attitudes and values. And one of the ways that I can say is that we have to start young. I would even say, I mean, we used to have programs with preschool. So right at the stage, we are putting very fundamental values about materialism, of what is important, of needs and wants and stuff like that. So unless we build the desire for a better financial, then the skills come in, the knowledge comes in. So I would say that we need very comprehensive, but also very targeted, you know. And I think we also should need to reach out to communities, whether it's young workers, especially women, the rural community, urban community. And while I want to admit that, you know, there's a lot of social media, I think for a lot of vulnerable groups, we need face-to-face, because this is about behavioral change. People just don't, you know. And one of the most important things, I mean, there are many people doing many things, but is it working, you know? So we need evidence-based to ensure that, you know, things are working, because our thing is not just about increasing knowledge, but about changing behavior. So we want to make sure that the investment we make is effective. So, to add what you said in your report, in the report, AKPK report, we need continuous campaigning. It's not one-off. So, through continuous campaigning and starting early, we hope to build the values, skills, and knowledge so that the next generation, well, we hope will have a more responsible financial management.
Thank you very much, Dato. I think it's a very good recommendation to those who actually provide education, financial education training to our consumers. You mentioned very spot on the delivery method. We need to look into the very effective financial education method so that we can ensure the behavioral improvement among the consumers in Malaysia. We will take a short break before we go to the final round, Dato. So please stay tuned and we'll come back.
Let's go.
Betul ke ni rumah dia?
Betul lah tu.
Besar.
Memang besar. Kau ada?
Tak ada.
Rumah aku ada track kereta mainan. Kau ada?
Tak ada.
Rumah aku boleh main polo air. Kau ada?
Tak ada.
Kolam renang dia ni kali isi bila air dah cukup untuk mandi sebulan. Kau ada?
Tak ada.
Rasa je tu. Bil elektrik rumah dia ni cecah 2,000. Mana taknya aircon, lampu, TV pasang 24 jam. Kau ada?
Tak ada.
Untuk ngeberesin rumah ini aja perlu pakai 5 orang. Setiap seorang gajinya 2,000. Kau ada?
Tak ada.
Untuk jaga rumah ni kena ada 5 orang tukang kebun. Kau ada?
Tak ada.
Setiap bulan dia bayar rumah ni dekat bank 10,000. Kau ada?
Aku tak ada. Tapi kau ada ke duit nak bayar semua ni?
Tak ada.
Besar rumah, besarlah belanjanya. Jangan sampai begitu. Tanya AKPK terlebih dahulu sebelum membuat sebarang keputusan kewangan. #AskAKPK.
Let's go.
Welcome back to the Insights brought to you by AKPK Financial Education and Wellbeing Research Center. We still have with us distinguished speakers that passion about consumerism, and we also have very awesome audience on the FB, and we have a few questions, and I think it's worth to take some of the questions and we can discuss. Maybe I can take some questions from Haji Yusof from Johor. So the question is, how do we create a national movement towards enhancing financial education? So maybe perhaps I would like to ask this question to Dato'. You would like to answer this question?
Sure. I think to create a national movement, currently we have the National Financial Education Strategy. We have a structure called FEN, the Financial Education Network, that's leading. And these are all the providers, and I think they're excellent programs. But to create a national movement, we need to bring the community, the consumers into the landscape. Whether it's, which are the targeted groups? We are targeting the B40, we're targeting young workers, we're targeting women groups. So to make it a national movement, every consumer must feel that they have access and there must be a way of providing information to them. So I think that's how we want to make financial education part of our culture, because we've seen the consequences when people do not manage. There's a lot of stress, financial problems, of course, but also family. That's even related with divorce and other kind of social problems. But while there are excellent programs that are being carried out, we need the recipient side to come into the equation. That's how I say that we want to make financial education accessible and part of our culture. That's how we create a national movement.
That's a very awesome feedback and answers that very spot on what additions can be done. And I would like to take another question, maybe perhaps one more question, Dato', for you. Maybe how do we ensure financial education is effective in changing behavior? You mentioned the behavior just now.
I think the fundamental thing here is not just about knowledge, or it's about changing behavior. It's how people actually behave, which is more responsible. Now, when we talk of changing behavior, we have to look at the individual, of course, but we also look at the environment, So, for example, there may be environmental factors that promote unnecessary expenditure. For example, the latest is, my concern is, for example, the buy now, pay later schemes, you know.
Yeah.
So we need to look, of course, at the individual. We also look at the kind of environment that they're exposed to. So to create effective programs, number one, it must be evidence-based. Whether it's the content, whether it's the delivery method, you know, how the interaction and things like that, to ensure that what we do brings about the knowledge and attitude, and that knowledge and attitude is manifested in behavior. For example, in your report, 77% said they intend to change, but have they changed?
Yeah.
You know, what are the factors that are preventing that change? So these are the things that we need to be very honest about, you know. So I think this is how we move forward, evidence-based and involving the public generally.
Thank you very much, Dato'. We have got a number of questions. Maybe to be fair with other speakers, I'll take one question from Zulfakar from Seremban. So as we all know, Malaysia's cost of living is rising, yes, and the government has developed a number of plans to mitigate the consumers' cost of living. And what is the primary role of Cabinet HDP in this plan, particularly in terms of changing the people's lifestyle in order to cover their overall expenses? So they mentioned about Cabinet HDP. I suppose this question is for Ms. Sumita. Ms. Sumita?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mafrukin. If we see in a country with a free market economy like Malaysia, consumer lifestyle can influence market demand and supply, as well as price of goods in the market. Acknowledging these changes, the ministry has implemented various initiatives to help the consumer face the issue of increasing cost of living. This can be translated through a few programs such as Buy Malaysia product, or campaign Beli Barangan Malaysia, which is a way to help the local entrepreneurs, especially the small and medium enterprises, as well as it is to mitigate the current economic pressures and problems by promoting domestic consumption. Another program that we are doing in a quite big scale is program Jualan Murah Keluarga Malaysia, which is recently launched by the Prime Minister in August 2022, which is a cheap sale campaign which aims to provide the underprivileged with basic necessities at a cheaper price, and it is actually implemented nationwide at 600 state assembly constituencies and also 13 parliamentary constituencies. And also recently, a committee called Pasukan Khas Jihad Tangani Inflasi were established in June 2022 to focus on strategies that can immediately control the rise of inflation in the country. So our minister, Datuk Sri Alexander Natalinggi, is also a member of this committee. So this committee has taken various important decisions and also implemented, among others, are like continuing to control the price of chicken and chicken eggs, as well as continuing to control the ceiling price of palm cooking oil packaged in 1 kg, 2 kg, 3 kg and 5 kg bottles. And also control prices for commodities such as rice and refined white sugar, and also the price of natural gas. We also recently launched the Keluarga Malaysia cheap sale campaign, which is a joint venture funding initiative between the government and the digital platform partners, like e-commerce, e-payment and sharing economy such as Shopee, Lazada. If you go to their platform, when you buy from certain traders, merchant, you can see the logo, the DE Dagang. So they are actually part of our program, which actually provide discounts and other discounts to the consumers. The ministry also launched an application called Price Catcher to help consumers to compare prices of basic goods at certain premises in the local area. This application enables consumers to be more informed about the market price of daily necessities and make the best choice according to their budget. So this Price Catcher app can be downloaded through the Google Play Store or Apple Play Store, App Store. And so that are some of the ways KPDHCP is trying to actually mitigate the consumer cost of living at the moment. So back to you, Mr. Mafrukin.
Maybe I can get one question for Prof Maya to respond. From Shakira from Rawang. From now that most countries are in the endemic phase, how do you foresee the retail sales consumer behavior in UAE? Prof Maya.
Right, right. Well, it looks rosy. Oh, mashallah, alhamdulillah, it looks rosy. In fact, this rosiness has been also seen in the statistics where the retail sales or consumer spending has actually increased by 14% in the second quarter of 2022 as compared to the second quarter in 2019. So from there on, yeah, we can basically, be much more confident that the resilience, the consumer confidence, as well as stability have specifically returned. But of course, it is depending on the economic landscape of each of the countries. Like for example, in UAE, we have, like the disposable income is higher, yeah, due to the higher average income, and of course, the percentage of expatriates, yeah, working here is specifically much higher, relatively speaking, yeah, as compared to other countries. And of course, the government ongoing focus on pandemic management, as well as introduction of a range of different kinds of initiatives, is also contributing to this rosiness, yeah, in terms of the picking up of consumer spendings or household spendings and whatnot. We do, I think last year, the government have actually introduced a different, working days. Yeah, previously we were working from Sunday to Thursday, and they have actually shifted that to Monday to Friday, following the international working standards. But of course, in some other Emirates, yeah, like Sharjah, we are working from Monday only to Thursday, yeah, government sectors. So we have a 3-day weekend. So those would basically, most of the consumers would be more inclined towards shopping, yeah, during this longer holiday. And on top of that, they have also introduced a new law permitting full foreign ownerships of companies, yeah. So that basically also contributing to increased sales in terms of the real estates and whatnot. And also going forward, I think most of us knows that the FIFA is also coming up, yeah, in 20th November, soon, right? So even though it's done in Qatar, but Doha and Dubai is actually very close, about 1 hour away via flight. So the overflow of tourists will also be coming over, and it looks inshallah rosy, yeah, specifically speaking on UAE. Yeah, yes, back to you, in
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, World Cup Qatar, Prof. All right, so before we conclude the session today, maybe perhaps we can have a short break before we come back and conclude. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Let's go.
Kerana aku memilih untuk tidak lari, kerana aku memilih untuk mengurusnya, kini aku bebas menikmati kehidupan.
Let's go.
Welcome back to the Insights, brought to you by AKPK Financial Education and Wellbeing Research Center, FEWRC. We are at the final round of discussion. Before we go back, and what the key takeaways and insights that we want to go back and try to think for the best interest of consumers. maybe perhaps my final questions to Dato, as Secretary General of FOMCA. What is actually FOMCA's role, and what kind of interventions is needed, do you think, that we need to continue moving forward?
One of the fundamental roles of any consumer organization is consumer well-being. And one of the key aspects of consumer well-being is financial well-being. And we all know the consequences of poor financial management, whether it's savings, having too many debts, not enough money for retirement. So I'm personally very passionate about this, and so is FOMCA, because I think financial well-being is critical in any family and personal happiness. Yeah, our contribution is we will continue to do consumer research. This is how we find that the situation is serious, apart from others. We're involved with consumer empowerment programs in rural areas. We started even with when we had the funding at kindergarten, and of course continuous advocacy. Where the issues that we think will jeopardize consumer interests, we advocate for government in terms of better regulation and better laws. So that's our continuous role.
The keyword you mentioned, financial well-being, is also our passion in AKPK, Dato'. And I think maybe I would like to also recall the research that we did back in 2018. We look into the relationship between the financial knowledge will influence the financial behavior, and the financial behavior, a good financial behavior, also will influence a good financial well-being. So we will need to start to look into the financial knowledge. That is very crucial. You mentioned that. All right. So moving to UAE, Prof. Maya. Last question to you. That mentioned about changing behavior, consumer behavior changes and whatnot. But the question is, what good consumer behavior that need to stay? Lesson from the pandemic, Prof.
Right. I think we, being the consumers ourselves, most of us has been very, very much cautious. Yeah, during this pandemic, we have only been looking at buying essential items as compared to non-essential items. Yeah, some of the good habits that we observe, that we are, apart from being cautious, we also plan our budget. Yeah, but I like the concept that is being highlighted. I'm giving some insight from the report of AKPK, the structured decision process, where we are basically encouraging consumers to have the plan and do record their spending. That is basically a good consumers' behavior that is we expect it would stay. So inshallah, like what Dr. Paul has also highlighted, a consumer well-being would mean that a good consumer well-being would also indicate a good financial well-being, and a good financial well-being will also lead to good mental health, and we are less stressed in managing our expenses and whatnot. So yes, that is the part that we hope to be staying, the old habit, that we expect to be staying. And I would also like to basically highlight that one philosophy of self-knowledge, know thyself, because whenever we want to buy something, especially the non-essential items, we would need to basically ask ourselves twice whether we really do need it. And I think just a piece of a quick advice or a quick sharing, to the youngsters: be more mindful of who you follow in the social media, because I think this would also be influencing the financial behavior of our youngsters specifically. Inshallah. So over to you back again, Mr. Ain.
Thank you very much, Prof. Last but not least, Ms. Smita, from the policy perspective. So how does Capital HB respond to the shift in consumer behavior, particularly with regard to the revision of existing policy in the best interest of nation consumers? Ms. Smita, you would like to elaborate a bit on the policy part?
Yeah, sure. Like we see, the current principal law for consumer protection in Malaysia is the CPA 1999. It drives the establishment of various consumer protection mechanisms in Malaysia, and thus bridge the gaps in other major laws which may be inadequate in protecting the consumers. So in response to the existing law, the National Consumer Policy was launched in July 2002, and it as a principal guidance in enacting laws related to consumer protection. So this policy becomes the reference for all consumer-related activities comprising various related sectors. As to mitigate new challenges and the current development involving consumers, especially after 4IR explosion and post-pandemic, KPD is actually conducting a review on the existing national consumer policy and also the consumer action plan, and which actually doing it to formulate a new NCP 2.0 and also a new consumer action plan. So among the main objective of this review that is being done is to evaluate the existing NCP, National Consumer Policy achievement involving goals, objectives, policies, strategies and action plan, and also to identify the main issues and problems related to consumer protection and empowerment at this time frame, and also determining the benchmark for consumer protection and empowerment by formulating action plan which will cut across various ministries and agencies, industries, as well as evaluating consumer behaviors and policy at national, regional and also global levels. So the NCP 2.0 policy will take into account the current development and challenges in consumer-related issues, and will outline the role of three main entities in Malaysia, namely the government, consumer, and also the industry, to create a conducive and healthy and consumer environment in Malaysia for the consumer well-being. So the NCP 2.0 is expected to be launched in 2023. Back to
All right,
you.
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Vita. I think it is very in time to look into revision of the policy because there is quite a number of data and insights that we can provide holistically into the development of policy. And we have a very good discussion. I had a great time with all the speakers. And before we conclude, I would like to summarize some of the insights that we have gathered. Some, the three key insights from today's discussion. Maybe perhaps number one, we can see that, impossible is the new possible. Evidence from advanced countries suggests that, it is possible to save even when the pandemic reduced our livelihood. That AKPK's data also show that encouraging signs of behavioral improvement during the crisis. And this is a very good behavior that need to stay. And second, financial distress does not discriminate. Malaysian consumers are not alone. Evidence suggests that financial distress is rising in both developed and developing countries. So consumers must equip themselves with the right financial knowledge and skills based on the was mentioned just now. And also the last but not least, maybe we can say and conclude that mindfulness as a new form of consumer protection. Scam is here to stay. Law enforcement is here to protect, but consumers must be extra vigilant of the changes in their environment. A big thank you to all our guests, Dr. Paul of FOMCA, Dr. Maya Puspa of Al-Qasimiyah University, and Ms. Sumita of KPDN HCP. So till we meet again in the next episode, and this is The Insights, where theory meets practice.
Let's go.